Это был один из самых громких терактов. Террористы захватили в заложники более 1500 человек, 129 были убиты.
The new irrational idea of the Russian government springs from their confidence that America was victorious in the Cold War, thus using semantic war as a weapon. Here we need to take a step back and consider one important moment. No efforts initiated by the propagandists are ever successful against the opposition when they don't have the support of influential people. After the First World War, up until 1947, Europe had multitudes of intellectuals who openly empathized with the Stalin regime. Aragon, Roland, Gide, Malraux, Barbu, Feichtwanger, Dreiser, Thomas and Henrik Mann were involved in a game initiated by Ilya Ehrenburg. On the pretext of anti-fascism, they were writing articles with unhidden sympathy towards Stalin that formed the public opinion in the West. Kremlin now understands that currently there is no support, and that is why the efforts of Kremlin propaganda and special forces are aimed at the Western people in order to infiltrate their minds with this new Russian ideology.
Как там это Шварц? Штольц? Отчет прислала?
Да не, жалуются все. Финансирование, денег не хватает.
Все они так, все мало. А без денег?
Люди, как бы сказать, живущие, наблюдающие политику, очень часто
People following politics
миром управляют деньги.
often think that money runs the world. It is evident in social networks. The general thought is that as the money runs out, the political regime will collapse. Many look at some political processes and think, well, they all say that because they are being paid. This is a grossly naive thing. The world is partly ruled by money. The other significant part is done through words, meaning by semantics. A space is created where people start lean on certain keywords that they hear, and they start reinterpreting reality through these words. 15 years ago, in some military doctrines, you would find mention of the Semantic War. So semantics as battle of decay of word meaning and its transformation.
Разложение смысла слова за его трансформацию.
В значительной мере благодаря вот этим самым французским семиотикам, особенно Фуко.
Thanks to French semiologists Foucault and Barthes, it became clear that the conflict is not between statements, expressions, or stance of truth, but discourses, in short, different methods of conceptualization. As Foucault said, crucial is not to express the truth, but be within the truth, and being in this discourse of truth. And these people are not KGB at all. These are, for instance, Pavlovsky, who started developing various discourses of power. I don't know to what extent it was a cynical game, or if they were just working off their grants, or maybe it was growing heated excitement. I can reorientate the people and the minds of Russian people. Yes, these discourses are armed with media and punitive institutions, and they have effect. It turned out that Putin has no chances in totalitarian state without any ideology. Nevertheless, it turned out that there are things more influential and powerful than ideology. Instincts, some reflexes, and certain emotions. And how the major part of Russian propaganda is based on two emotions, on offense and hatred.
Значительная часть российской пропаганде держится вот на двух эмоциях. На обиде и на ненависти.
I think it is naive to think that people from KGB felt the full effect of the regime, and that these huge opportunities fell at their feet, these enormous opportunities. They thought it a good possibility to cross the Russian border into other countries to try to spread their reach of influence on other territories. It is clear that money facilitated perhaps not blunt corruption, but they influenced business, news and media. It is possible to affect the voting process. This is sort of human, simple logic, I think. The principle is give them a finger and they will take an arm. If you're not involved in this, and I mean you are not in the government's money, you do not work in Gazprom or any other corporation, you can observe it critically from afar. Then you will see without much effort that this expansion will be growing and spreading, and will try to push its depiction of the world to the others, to other countries. That their ideas and the picture is totally KGB, Soviet. Putin never attempted to hide.
But it's like today, the Czech Prime Minister was also on a list of secret agents, working for secret police, registered agent, So you look at Poland, what's happening in Poland, you look at what's happening in Hungary, and then you realize it's a pattern. It's like common stories when populists took the power and knew how to handle it, knew how to deal with it. And now we are looking at it, and it's incredible.
Like rust, you can never control its, can never give it directions. Like the vulnerable metal parts get corroded in the end, the whole structure gets covered in rust entirely. In 1999, nobody had the goal of interfering with elections in America. But slowly this these funds and KGB school, these criminal world even, they all akin to spider web engulfed everything.
So when suddenly there were a million people in the streets, agreeing to the change of politics and everything, it was incredible, but then it started to change. The euphoria disappeared and people started to be interested in their everyday lives, money, consumption, practical side of life. And they are not grateful enough.
So what are the contents and methods of the semantic war declared by Kremlin against the West? In order to broadcast the ideas, special channels were created such as Russia Today, a dedicated internet department known as the Organist Trolls, hackers occupying themselves with cyber attacks, official cultural centers sponsored by embassies, and Orthodox Church in various Western countries, strongly influenced and controlled by the Moscow Patriarch. In 2012, not for the first time, a Russian minority in Czech Republic was divided based on their views of Russian government and the politics of the regime. A lot of organizations are fed by the Russian embassy and are under its direct order, receiving instructions and being the fifth column of the Kremlin. Could you name a few of these organizations? Of course, Artek, various newspapers that we can see in the embassy and the consulate, Prague Telegraph, Inform Prague, and so on.
If you are using language, and if you are using mass media, and if you are distorting mass media because of the information overload, what they are creating, that they dilute the mass of information we are getting from everywhere, and there is so much of it, and it's so fast, and often it's very superficial. So they create a kind of chaos that people can. It's very difficult to differentiate what's truth and what's not, what's likely, what's unlikely, and they understand this very well because they have the experience of tens of years on different level, but the principles are the same. You know, that they were able to create totally artificial, untruth environment, but now they do it in digital world. They do it electronically. They do it on all different networks. But the mentality is the same. They understand that people are not so thorough in investigating, you know, what's there. They don't have time for it. They live their normal lives, and suddenly there comes many different information, slightly distorted, very cleverly distorted things, or outright lies, and you are not equipped to deal with it. So that's and they have the resources to do it.
Here, according to independent sources, there are 140 internet portals alone that are financed or copy of disinformed Putin sources. So apart from Aeronet and Sputnik and plenty of others, for example, there is Semantic, which is a curious media source, that even the ambassador of Russia claims that whatever is in Lidové noviny does not compare in content, but Semantic is another level, and he values them highly. That shows an utter unprofessionalism of Russian diplomats, unfortunately. This is most certainly not a paper issued by the parliament, literally, but a cheap yellow pages edition that is censored. Undoubtedly, the observers from the embassy come to my events, and they think by default that I am behind all events, ranging from Czech to supporting Navalny. This cannot be disputed, and they don't believe that the young generations can organize the events themselves. Moreover, I have a strange insight. I was speaking to the people in the embassy that are more balanced in their views towards the ideology. They think, no, they are sure that information about me and you goes to Moscow. Obviously, they have these responsibilities to describe the communities. They think that this school of the young generation is purely ideological and fueled by American money, with an aim of preparing troops / Russia's enemy. It is futile to overturn these ideas because not only it is complete madness, it is parallel universe. And the question, what reality do you find your own? You can live in Putin's realm, but why? Of course, it's understandable if you have the power and ability to create your own reality, your situation, your projects, and live in the parallel world, then you are not going to be interested in or affected by Putin, Russia, because I do hear what I'm interested in, and it becomes interesting for people, and we start living here in our own reality. You can consider it living in a bubble, or you can say that Russia lives within its borders in this vacuum, and we're living in Europe in this open world. Have you ever come across an attitude from the European people? Well, it's good that you came here, very well that you're prospering, doing your things, that you're free, we have different values, but don't you think that it is your cross to bear to deal with Putin? Isn't it your responsibility to deal with Putin, who is crossing borders into Europe and the civilized world with his threats?
угрозами.
It is possible. I distance myself to the maximum from those who should be dealing with the president. I'm responsible for myself only. It is a syndrome of an artist, or perhaps an advantage, because art teaches to be responsible only for yourself and your own art, and it then reflects on your life. That is why it is important to make gestures that would show your position to the people, not only words or just silently not supporting Putin and therefore being out of the picture. No. As you remember, I asked for forgiveness of the Ukrainian people at Maidan, and it was important for many people and for me. I participate in Czech events because it's crucial for me to make this distinct gesture to distance myself from the people who are supporting Putin by default. Well, yes, Russia is stronger. So here, Ukrainian government made many miscalculations here. To be honest, it's horrible to imagine. I believe they just got caught in their own trap. It's my personal opinion. Regarding regular people, I am very happy that they're staying adequate. Despite everything, we communicate normally, and I don't have a drop of at all. I don't know. I come from Moscow, and I think I represent the opinion of my circle at least, and we have an absolutely adequate attitude towards any country, any nation. It is possible that the next steps in carrying out the plan of Semantic War is increasing the frequency of diversions and cyber attacks on the Western institution and the Western people. The Russian government, with deep roots in the criminal world, will utilize manipulation and deception, followed by physical threats. Intervention in the presidential elections in Germany and US, attempts of coup in Montenegro, poisoning in Salisbury, targeting of OPCW in the Netherlands by Russian spies. Everything listed is a part of one systematic chain of events. The growth of Semantic War is taking us one step closer to armed conflict, whilst we're waiting on the precipice of fear, tension, and distrust.
No, I don't watch Russian TV enough. I mean, I do. I follow the Russian media, but I would say maybe you are right in this way. But still, I feel the role of Russian work in Syria another, unfortunately. But this part of importance of Russian being in Syria, maybe it's not that important now, but few years ago it was very important accelerator of whole things. And the, let us say, success of Crimean mission now in hearts of Russian people was actually the first seed was done by the Syria.
Do you feel this?
Absolutely, it's extremely dangerous. It's dangerous on all levels. It's not just in some aspect. It's totally dangerous situation because it's also they are influencing the global society totally, and they are trying to create strategical connections. It could be China, Africa. They are always trying to find the weak spot. They could create alliances. They can create strategical connections for contemporary reasons. A year later they can change their position totally, and it's okay. They just go for the immediate gain, and they are. I think the West. Generally was so stupid in the way, the Western countries, that they didn't realize how bad things were and how bad things are. Maybe it's changing now, but generally people on the street, they think, well, okay, we are happy, we are reasonably rich, we live very good lifestyle, but they don't realize that it can change like that. It can change like within a week. They don't believe it. But if you talk to people who were in Germany, when Hitler came to power, and they also didn't see it. For a long time they didn't see that things are so bad. They couldn't believe it. They didn't even believe that the people were in concentration camps, and they were witnesses who came out and they gave reports. They described everything, and they didn't believe them. They simply didn't. They refused to believe them. I think generally people don't accept how bad people can be and how weak, just everybody can fail to a degree, that we are all part of it, but there are some really dark forces.
For me it was just a sort of logical step, the same as the previous ones. I mean, obviously Russia is now more efficient than they were before. I mean, they were interfering in the Czech election. They were supporting far right and far left parties in 90s. I mean, there was even some Russian spy who got drunk and recorded and then expelled from the country, and he was just bringing money to some far right, far left parties. The difference was that at that time these parties were not successful. Now they are successful all around. The Russians are just paying the same people, directly using some people. Then they obviously have other tools or other persons who are not that visible. There are these discussions whether Trump actually is a Russian puppet or not. I'm not saying that or that, but it's a real, serious newspapers. This discussion. There's discussion here whether Klaus and Dlouhý, whether they were Russian puppets from the beginning, because when it came to our energy self-independence, they were voting against this Ingolstadt pipeline, and they've been doing pro-Russian policy for
ever since.
Ever since. So you saw Russia being aggressive, only less efficient and maybe less daring. Maybe because lack of resources or not such a fertile ground, which we now got. The ground is fertile for this type of propaganda.
When I took part and had an exhibition in Venetian Biennale, for example, my son, who is now 20 years old, was lifting the flag of Russia in front of the Russian pavilion. It was 2004 or 2006, and I would not say that it was a proud moment. It was natural to be Russian and to represent Russia. Now it is unthinkable from a different perspective, because I do not wish to represent Russia. I want to present myself. Entire Russian television is under the control of government. It's natural, and it has censorship. But it's always been like this. There is no need to be surprised by it. So Kiselyov and other people are just doing what they're being told. That's it. It does not stop there. Special forces bribe community officials and politicians in the West. Starting from 2014, fake news has been spreading across various social groups. Each targeted audience is treated differently, touching the subjects such as immigration, bureaucracy, European values, and downfall of the model of Western democracy. Let's not forget about the tension, exaggeration, and shifting the focus away from the truth. The propagandist's agenda is to transpose the idea that the persona of Putin and the model of his rule is the most successful and effective. This idea has received acclaim and support in some Western societies. Lately, Czech Republic is being linked to multiple cyber attacks. It is evident that Russian special forces are using Czech Republic as a stepping stone for developing their plots and methodologies. That the persona of Putin and the model of his rule is the most successful and effective. This idea has received acclaim and support in some Western societies. The fact is that Western society is making Putin's work easier. So they step away from their system of democratic values. Morals and ethics have become an accessory And the main value is the money now. Everything has a price. If the Western community continues on this path, then it will end up like Byzantine and Roman empires. Because when you abandon your values and push consumers' values, where can it lead? I met the authorities and invited TV heads of TV channels, director of Czech TV to the council meeting, and I pointed out, how can you not fulfill your function? You do not talk about a system of democratic values. You try to feed the viewers like those commercial channels, these trashy series. You make negative news that drag the viewers down. The positive news are almost inexistent. I told them off and showed them motivational managerial system of a Czech television, where the main criteria is the number of views and followers. The media is under a lot of political pressure. Instead of objectivity, they attempt to promote the so-called equality or political correctness. To put it in more common or vulgar words, one could say 10 blankets to the Jew and 10 blankets to Hitler. You cannot be neutral here. You have to see and distinguish between the good and the evil. If we, without any comments, let both sides speak for themselves, it will not lead to anything good. Propaganda is based on questioning, on doubting all and everything. Even Russian media makes variations of the same events so that one would be in conflict with another. So to satisfy the consumer, the truth is not recognizable anyway, and God knows, and we will not worry about it. People stop being citizens and they become serfs. They are subjects of money or dictator.
They use everything, they will use everything they can. Everything at their disposal is good for them. They can be anything: art, economy, propaganda, different issues, feminism, anything. Anything which can be used for their reasons, for local politics, bigger scale politics, global politics. You know, they are very good players. And they know how to play the game, and they take advantage of the naivety of most people. People should be. I think that probably the only way is a real education, in a sense that, but people don't want to accept it, that we are limited in our understanding of what's happening. We are limited in, we overestimate ourselves morally. We think we are better than what we are, and we are not. We have so many illusions about the universe, you know, about the world, about different nationalities, you know, about politics, about ourselves. You know, it's like in a dream. I know it sounds a bit too much, but many people were saying this for a long time, you know, for hundreds and hundreds of years, that we have the tendency to overestimate ourselves and underestimate the situations and the conditions, because we are adapted to it. We are adapted.
Мы это и есть Россия.
We are Russia, and that the country or its territory is now in chaos and madness for over 100 years. I think that it has no connection to us. We feel like Russians and speak the Russian language, read Russian literature in its original language, and why should we apply this criteria? What does motherland, state, and whoever else have to do with us. I am not interested in this. I'm interested in what my friends, my children and myself think of me, and I'm interested in their opinion. To be honest with myself and towards myself. In my opinion, Russia only lived freely from 1985 till 1993. Taking into consideration that in 100 years to have 5 or 6 years of freedom, it is not sufficient to think that we are the traitors. I think the country is betraying its people, citizens, and not the other way around. And that people support the current regime, these are the traitors.
Well, telling truth is important because lying is or releasing many versions about things which happened in order to cover the truth is a very important tool of Russian propaganda, and then keeping our institution healthy and keeping a very strong army.